Hello and welcome back, and that's right, today I want to talk about the very best NAS for photography of 2022 and 2023. Whether you are looking at buying something to migrate away from Google storage, Dropbox, Mac storage or whatever, or you're looking to upgrade your existing system, you've come to this video because you're wondering about the best NAS to either store photos, to distribute and share photos, to edit photos, or all of those together. And the technically five NASs that I'm going to talk about today are the best of the best for their own respective reasons. But before we go any further, it's worth highlighting a few things. Number one, when you're going for a NAS, if this is your first NAS, you're going to be slightly worried about maximising your investment. You want to know that the money you're laying down is a little bit back in what you're getting for it. The value, the return on investment, the ROI. What a horrible term that is. Now, all of the systems I'm going to talk about today, I can guarantee, provide the following. Number one, they provide support of a very degree of different RAID configurations where you've got multiple drives giving you different degrees of storage, performance and redundancy. That's a safety net. On top of that, you've got snapshots, which are kind of like image blueprints that you can roll back on over time with different retention policies there, which allow you to roll back your data. On top of that, you've got multiple different backup means, from backing up to USBs, backing up to other NASs, backing up to the cloud, backing up to other different service providers too. All of them built into all of the devices that we can talk about today. All of them arrive with a graphical user interface, a GUI, that's accessible via the web browser, accessible via your mobile phone, your iOS or your Android, or even your weirdly Windows mobile phone, is that still a thing, device, or your BlackBerry, probably, who knows. On top of that, they're all Mac supporting, they're all Windows supporting, they're all Linux supporting. All of these devices can be accessed remotely via the internet with multiple different encryption and security methods built in, or just via the local area network or your network, your LAN. So all of them provide all of those. As well as that, they all provide tools for not only the management of data and file folders and structure and, remote access storage, but also photo optimized and video optimized tools as well as supporting their own first-party tools, there's third-party tools as well. So any of these NASs you go for are going to give you all of those things I said, but it's only in very specific categories where some of them stretch their muscles a bit more than most. But before we get to the four key winners, let's talk about that little fifth one that I mentioned. So there is the fifth, the honourable mention. This is a NAS that is not in my recommended categories here, and it is going to be harder to find. But the reason it's an honourable mention is it's still a damn fine NAS, and it, like Icarus, it flies so close to the sun. So it is this NAS here, the DS920 Plus, released in summer 2020. This NAS has just been a stalwart, not only supporting DSM from Synology there, but its integrated graphics quad-core Celeron processor inside, its 4 GB of memory that can be scaled up, and its wide bevy of applications that it provides in DSM make it, now with the price getting even lower as we see it in more deals and on clearance and stuff like that, a great option. I find it very tough to recommend it completely as a photo NAS in 2022-2023 because it is 2.5 years old and it has seen a refresh with a newer revision of the DS923. But given that it's seen improved pricing, and more importantly, it's still possible to use this with DSM 6.2, the older version of Synology, which has Synology Moments, arguably the more AI enabled application from Synology more than Synology Photos, and Synology Moments, which although isn't quite as glossy as Synology Photos or Moments, has a lot more businessy photo features. The fact that you can get this with DSM 6.2 or 7 and have that flexibility, as well as having a greater degree of third-party hardware and software support on the device in DSM 6.2 or in the hardware architecture there, and with an integrated graphics CPU, if you see it on offer, don't write it off. Just because it's not in this list, it's still a great NAS. And chances are you're going to start seeing this NAS appearing a lot more, either secondhand on eBay or on clearance outlets at a decent little price drop compared with its new refreshed alternative in the 923 Plus. But that's enough of the past. Let's crack on with the future with my first entry. And this is going to be the recommended best NAS, I would say, right now in 2022-2023 for the semi-pro photographer. Now that term, semi-pro, oh, there's a lot to unpack there, isn't there? Because semi-pro can mean lots of things. It can even mean that what you're doing so well that someone would go, you're almost a professional. Or it's you've got a job and you've got a bit of a side hustle there for what you're doing, you know, with your spare time, with your camera and your odds and sods. Maybe you're, you know, sharing your photos online on different, you know, Shutterstock or whatever websites there. Or you do a few little weddings on the side and you distribute those photos. For you, as if you're semi-pro and you're trying to find a device that finds a line between home and prosumer, and when you want to make the jump into turning this into a full-time job, looking at YouTubers online, then this, the Synology DS923 Plus, may very well be the NAS for you. This is the refresh to the honourable mention there, the 920 I mentioned. Now, why is this better than that? Well, although it costs a little bit more, its architecture tries to kind of tightrope walk between the home and the business user, and a lot of photographers will be able to use a lot of its features right now, even though they're still working at Tesco's. But later on, when they make it big, when they realize that this is their passion and they can make a living out of this, that device is still going to be just as usable. What does it bring to the party? Well, I could talk about the hardware, and I will say in this video I will talk a little about hardware, but mainly I know you photographers want to talk a little bit more about utility and software and abilities and functions, which I'll try to do. So hardware wise, it's a great CPU inside. It's a dual core 4-thread AMD processor inside there. It doesn't have integrated graphics, but if you're not going to be utilizing it for things where you need server-side graphics handling, that's going to be fine. It's got 4 gig of ECC memory on there that can be scaled up to 32 gig. Why is that important to you, Mr. Photographer or Mrs. Photographer? Well, nice and simple, because ECC memory is called error correcting code memory, and it has an extra little module on the memory there, and as data passes through it, as data is written to the device and it goes into the memory for the right operation, it takes a kind of snapshot blueprint or parity data of that data, and as it passes through the memory, as it's getting written onto the main storage base, at the end of that pass through, it's compared against that blueprint. And if there's any inconsistencies, anything that can lead to something known as bit rot there, which is inconsistencies in data that can roll over time, it repairs it, and therefore the integrity of your warm and cold backups are going to be maintained very, very well. Now, on top of that, Synology's DSM platform, as mentioned earlier on, has a bevy of different applications, whether that's integrating with SaaS, software as a service platforms, or integrating with your existing database of photos that you have maybe stored on Apple platforms or on Google platforms or Microsoft platforms. You can synchronize with a lot of cloud providers on this device via Hyper Backup, or using a lot of the more enterprise features of something called Active Backup to integrate with those services that you may be using that are cloud-based, that you want to bring it into the home onto a NAS on the network. On top of that, the storage manager and supported C2 cloud services provide you with a multi-tiered backup solution to develop at your fingertips. As well as that, you've got the option of Synology Hybrid RAID. Now, for those of you that are coming off of this, known as the Drobo, one of the features people loved about the Drobo before the company kind of went a bit shonky was, one, it was incredibly user-friendly. It just appeared very easily on your Mac Network Manager. But also, it had that fluid RAID system. You could mix and match drives nice and easily there, and it will give you the best possible output in terms of capacity and performance. That's what Synology Hybrid RAID is. You can mix and match drives, which means on day one, you can add some drives, and later on, add bigger and better drives, and not have traditional RAID configurations cap you at the smallest available drive. There's also the expandability of this device with the DX517 that allows you to have 5 more bays of storage. Yum, yum. And on top of that, if we go to the rear of the device, we can talk about this. This is what I mean when we talk about scalability. Because although the rest of the ports on this device are fairly pedestrian, this system gives you the option to, down the line, add 10 GBE. Now, why is that important, Mr. Semi or Mrs. Semi-Pro photographer there? Well, this device with 1 GBE means you can store and distribute your photos very, very easily. When you want to edit them though, and if you're dealing with RAW, if you're dealing with real dense photos there that you want to edit on your Mac and don't want to keep a local copy, 10 GBE allows you to now move from a 100 megabytes per second connection to 1,000 megabytes per second connection, which is more than enough to edit a lot of high dense photo media, and it's the entry point into HD video editing as well. So You can connect with it directly, cable to cable, with a 10 GBE equipped Mac. And on top of that, if I had one here at my disposal, there is a 10 GBE to Thunderbolt adapter that will allow you to directly interface with this device. On top of that, you've got things like Synology Drive, which allows you to create a shared team folder with all of your connected devices, and they can be Windows or Mac or Linux or Android. It doesn't matter. It can cross-platform. And on top of that, with all those people working and with shadow file creation and file retention policies and file locking being improved in Drive in the future, as well as write once, read many or worm support, as well being integrated into the Synology platform. It's just a great place to start with your file sharing with Synology Photos and all the other management and file sharing attributes in Synology's platform, be it over the network or the internet. Or you can scale up later on as you get more and more pro for your photo editing, and with Synology Photos having different doorways that you can use for your professional photography sharing with its own user interface and login, or your own personal gallery with AI supported photo recognition. There's just a lot going for it, and overall the DS923 as a semi-pro NAS is a great choice in 2022 and 2023. But what if you're not semi-pro? What if you don't want to edit files and edit all your photos in RAW on your Mac or Windows system? What if what you want is a NAS that's going to allow you to maintain those decades of digital photos that we all own, as well as prepare you for the future so you can share them with relatives, colleagues, friends, whatever? What if what you're looking for is the perfect home photo NAS? Well, it's this one. In terms of 4-bay NASes, and definitely in terms of photo home NASes for photography, I would definitely recommend this. There are other NASes out there that can do a lot of the things that we're going to talk about, but not all of them. And I think it's really important, and when we talk about this, we keep things in perspective, because this is a little bit more expensive than not only some of the other NASes that we're going to talk about, but on top of that, there are 1- and 2-bay NASes out there. Why would you go for a 4-bay to start with when there is a 2-bay version of this NAS? Very good question. Well, this is the TS453E from QNAP. Now, this device pretty much does anything you're going to need in terms of home photography. So to put it into perspective, you've got 4 bays of storage, so you've got that RAID support there. You don't have the fluid RAID that we mentioned earlier on, but you do have traditional RAID 5 up to RAID 5 there. On top of that, it arrives with an integrated graphics Intel Celeron processor inside. That CPU, again, with integrated graphics, will come in very handy later on, as you're about to find out. And on top of that, it arrives with 8 gig of memory, which when it comes to managing photos and thumbnails and viewing large images, integrated graphics and lots of memory is exactly what you want to hear. It doesn't have that ECC memory, but then once again, it's not trying to aim at the semi-pro market. It's not trying to aim at the photographer that wants to make it big and make it their livelihood. This is for people that want to distribute, catalogue, and have the perfect photo collection there. Now, in terms of applications and services that we talked about earlier on, it has some very, very impressive credentials in terms of software. It has all of those integrated third-party cloud synchronization apps. It's got a whole myriad in Hybrid Backup Sync 3 of backup tools built in there. But on top of that, it also has things like the MARS application, which allows you to synchronize with Google Photos, with your existing Google Photos collection there. And again, it is being upgraded to hopefully to improve on JSON file support. And it looks like that MARS application is going to be used more and more to integrate with other third-party applications too, specifically Photos as well. But we're hoping to see more development on that, maybe on the homebrew scene, or Synology starting to get more support with those third-party popular apps along the way. But on top of that, you've got Multimedia Console, a single portal application which allows you to completely micromanage multimedia, and also with a direct degree to photos on this system via one access point to go, these are the directories I want covered. I don't want these file types. I want these to be shared, these not to be shared, make these directories hidden. All of it in a single, very user-friendly user interface there. And in terms of photos, you've got Photo Station and you have QMaggie on there, an AI-supported photo recognition tool that recognises faces, people, things. And the things is what's really, really important, because not only is it scraping all the metadata, all of the background information on your photos of the camera, the aperture, the device, the location, all of that stuff, and all of it scraped, all of it to be used by the NAS to catalogue your photos effectively. But QMaggie also allows, with the scraping of that metadata, to cross-reference that against locations, so you can get geographical maps of where all your photos were taken, And with the AI supported services with photo recognition, it can scan decades of photos and go, right, this person has appeared so many hundreds of times. What's their name? Boom, give them a name, and that's it. From this moment forward, when photos of that person get uploaded in the future, they get added to that name because it now knows who that person is. But once you start naming people, you can go, I want all the photos of John and Tabitha in all the same photos. I don't know who Tabitha is. And then boom, bang, you have all of those photos shown to you on screen. But one more than that, unlike Synology Photos currently, which unfortunately had this feature prior to DSM 7, in QMaggie, you still have the ability to have thing recognition. It could recognise buildings, places, subjects, food, drink, like you would just search the word, I want pictures of the sky. And it's not looking for files with the word sky in the title. It analysed all the photos in the collection while it's been indexing, and it's catalogued and tagged that photo as sky because there's a picture of the sky in it, or a tree. You can even break down, you don't just put food, because you can. What you can break down into is very specific types of food, different cuisines, and that's what I mean about the AI photo recognition. Now that's using the base hardware, but this system also has two superfast M2 NVMe slots inside, which allow you to add 2 more bays of storage for faster storage, but also with those slots you can install Google's TPU, which is a small $20 to $30 AI upgrade, which you can pop inside, which then even further improves and enhances those AI supported services, as well as allowing you to use that TPU towards other services within the QNAP NAS there, because there are a myriad of other tools, not just backup and photo ones. On top of that, it may not have the option to add 10 GBE, but it does arrive with 2 2.5 GBE slots by default, up to 550 or so megabytes per second network connectivity with a bit of link aggregation and a switch. You can even get network adapters that allow you to add on your PC or Mac system 5 gigabit Ethernet with a USB device, no extra power. And there's even, if I had it here to hand, a $20 USB to 2.5 GBE adapter. So if you did want to edit photos on this NAS, you could connect this to your Mac or Windows system via USB and then run a cable directly into that, and then you can edit all of those on there at 250 to 279 megabytes per second. And again, why not go up to 500 or so using that 40 to 60 gig adapter? You will need one for the NAS though. So again, network connectivity, software and services included, all good there. And again, the system has USB 3.2 Gen 2 support as well, which allows you, if you want to have a USB backup, to take advantage of much faster USB backups if you want to add that to your backup strategy. So if you're a home user and you want to get the best home user photo NAS right now with all of those connected features and services, and you're not planning to move to semi-pro or pro in the next 5 years or so, this is a banging choice when it comes to getting a photo NAS in 2022. Next up, let's talk value, because I think a number of you who just watched that last segment where I talked about the 453E will probably be keen to say, but wait, that NAS is still like at least 400 to 500 nicker. That don't sound too cheap to me. And again, you're right. There are more value-based options out there. And the best value for a photo NAS to have access to most, if not all, of the features that I just talked about is the QNAP TS433. When it comes to photography, genuinely, QNAP have really cleared things this year. Of the 4 NASs I'm going to talk about, I'll be straight with you, this and the next one are QNAPs. And the TS433 here, from QNAP here, powered with an ARM-based Realtek processor there, it's just, for the price point that it is, and how much of all of the things that I just discussed on that more powerful home NAS there that it arrives with, it's incredible what you're getting for your money there. So again, we'll summarise over it. The CPU there, although it's not an Intel there and it is a Realtek ARM, if you're going to be a photo user and you're not going to use this for things like Plex, that will be more than enough for you. It runs exactly the same software as the 453E in QTS5. It has QMaggie, that AI supported photo application. It's got Photo Station, it's got Multimedia Console, it's got all of those backup services. Basically, all of the apps and services that I talked about for the previous one, this has got it. It just happens to have a slightly lower powered CPU and it can't stretch its muscles as much. On top of that, it has 2.5 GBE, but only the one port there. And on top of that, that memory inside there can't be upgraded. So it arrives with 4 gig of memory, but you can't scale it up. So the other one arrived with 8 gigs. So that's why it's still the value choice there, with a lower power CPU and lower capability CPU, but also half the memory there. But what it does have is an integrated NPU on board. Now, remember that Google thing I mentioned, that little upgrade? This has it by default. It arrives with it on board. The NPU AI there for AI supported services. So even though it has a lower powered CPU, much like integrated graphics on a processor is designed for specifically graphic enabled services, in the same way you need the right tool for the job, because you're not going to use a bread knife to cut a steak. This device, although the CPU doesn't have AI supported services on board, they've added an AI supported services component onto this device, and it having those 4 bays of storage and the RAID support on board means that despite it being a more affordable and lower powered version to the NAS we just discussed, it arrives at a better price point and still supports the majority of the services that QNAP provide, and does it at a lower price point. Although just remember, can't do as many at once. And in terms of value and the best value NAS for photos right now in 2022 going into 2023, you'll be hard pushed to beat the TS433. Now this next one is a hell of a jump. We've been talking about NASs that live somewhere around a 350 to about 550, 600 nicker mark. And now we're going to jump thousands of pounds into the future, because I want to talk about the most powerful pro NAS for photographers right now in 2022, 2023. And that's this, the TVS H874. My review for this device is imminent right now at the time of recording, so unfortunately I can't use it here on the channel. I will not be surprised if this video goes out either before my review or I make this review within 1 day of it. But I've already started getting my hands on this device, and I've got to say I really like it. Now the reason, and without me talking too much about its hardware, I want to talk about, as a photo user, the appeal. Again, the hardware, it's got an Intel Core i5 12th Gen processor inside. It's 6-core. It's ridiculously powerful with UHD 710 integrated graphics on board. It's got up to 64 to, still to be confirmed, 128 gig possible of memory arriving by default, I believe, with between 16 and 32 gig, depending on the configuration you go for. There's even an i7 and an i9 version knocking around being talked about here. All 12th Gen, all tremendously capable. But you've got access to all of those apps that we've talked about from QNAP on this device. What this also brings to the party is the following. One, it runs ZFS, zettabyte file system. So that means you can use with this device much higher performance file server access there, much faster RAID handling there. And again, there's so many things like inline data duplication, inline data compression, which if you are editing high 4 and 8K, and that's photo and video, are going to be advantageous to you. Talking of editing, this device also has M2 NVMe slots inside that are PCIe Gen 4. That's a big deal. Now, the reason it's a big deal is that means this system, you can install 7,000 megabytes per second SSDs to edit on. That's right. You can connect with this device via 10 GBE, 25 GBE, and 40 GBE with the right adapters on your local network there and a local switch if you need it. But those SSD bays inside giving you 7,000 megabytes per second, which if you're not aware, let me give you some perspective. The hard drive bays that you would populate with hard drives will give you about 200 or so megabytes per second. You rate them together, you might get lucky and hit 1,000 megs, 1,500 megs on a good day, or you could use SSDs, SATA SSDs. You might get lucky and hit 2,000 megs in the right RAID, in the right file profile setup there. That's using all 8 bays. But this system has those PCIe Gen 4 SSD bays inside, each of which can give you 7,000 megs of SSD with those on an 8,000 bandwidth lane. That's crazy. And that means that if you're going to use the main storage base for archival or cold or warm storage, or you're going to use them as archival to move projects over to, you can use those SSD bays inside for super fast storage. And those PCIe Gen 4 SSDs are getting more and more affordable and regularly on offer, I might add as well. Now, that's not the end of the road, because this system, although it's got all the other NAS features you'd expect, again, the NAS software, all the backups and all the other bits and bobs that I've talked about, what it also has is a PCIe Gen 4 architecture throughout. the main PCIe upgrade slots that allow you to add, again, 10 GB upgrades, so 1000 megs, 25 for 2500, and 4000 megabytes per second upgrades on this device. On top of that, because it's a PCIe Gen 4 slot there, and there's more than one slot, you can add a graphics card if you choose. That graphics card can be used for VMs, it can be used for AI supported services, it can be used for Plex, but it can also be utilized if you want to run a virtual machine in this device for your editing. So you could run a virtual machine on the PCIe architecture of this device. You could do massive photo shoots that you're backing up either remotely from the cloud or via a connected USB drive. Yes, there are 10 gig USB ports on this. But what you could do is run a virtual machine in this NAS alongside all of the data backup services and all the stuff that it's doing, completely parallel. And that VM, using a good amount of the hardware from that 12th gen Intel Core processor and running on the superfast NVMe's and accessing the archival storage area that you're backing up all your data to, either remotely, cloud or directly, and add a graphics card if you really want to go nuts on your photo video editing. This device here will allow you to create that machine that you can access anywhere in the world from the most low power little Chromebook and edit all of your photos remotely, because all of the work is being done there. You're just viewing it the same way you're watching YouTube. Imagine, so when you're buying this, you're not just buying something to store your data. This could reinvent your workflow. And then when you introduce things like Thunderbolt into this and the rest of the layout for QNAP devices, and if you've got a large team of users that need to work from one archive with the virtual machine inside if you choose to, doing all of your editing remotely around the world, for me, it is the ultimate 4K, 8K photo and, dare I say, video editing NAS system in the market right now. And I cannot see anything better than this arriving in the next 6 to 12 months. And that's why I recommend it not only for 2022, but 2023 as well. But this has been the best photo editing and video editing NASs of 2022-2023. If you're watching this video beyond about August 2023, then maybe see if some new stuff has come out there, but I'm pretty confident all of these are going to be just as good by summer 2023. Thank you so much for watching. There should be a full written article linked below going through all of these details and all of the devices that I've talked about, along with links to the reviews and the other test guides that we've created. If you need help choosing the right NAS, use the free advice section linked in the description. If you need community support, if you want to talk to a lot of other users about your decisions and talk about compatibility, again, head below, but go to the Ask NAS Compares forum, where myself and Eddie, who frankly does all the work there, will answer your queries alongside other community NAS members. And finally, if this video has helped you, and that's really important, and if you were going to go and buy from Amazon anyway, please use the links in the description. It won't cost you anything extra, and anything, and I mean anything you buy when you get to Amazon via that link, result in a small kickback coming back to us here at NAS Compares, me and Eddie, and it helps us do what we do because we're Amazon associates there. But only use those links if you're going to go from Amazon to Amazon anyway, and this video has helped you. Thank you so much for watching. If I don't see you before Christmas, have a wonderful time. Christmas pudding, get on that. I will see you next time.